and welcome to the first part of this three-part lesson on academic scaffolding. Let's start by talking about what we hope to achieve in this specific lesson. Our goal for this specific lesson is that you will have your own personal Rome research graph set up so that you can optimize all of the learning that you get through this course. Let's talk first and foremost about academic scaffolding. What do we actually mean by that term? Well, one of the books that was a great influence on most of the work that you see here and has been a great influence on most of Rome research users is Sonka Arend's How to Take Smart Notes. And in that book, Arend says that in order to think properly, you cannot do so just in your head. That real thinking, real deep thinking where you make insights and connections, requires some sort of external scaffolding. So, in this case, our external scaffolding is both the Rome research system and also the smart notes taking system that I have based primarily on Arend's methodology, although I have changed it quite a bit to fit the structure I think works with Rome research and with academia. So that's what I mean by academic scaffolding. So we have three segments in this lesson that talk about the Rome structure and how to use Rome when you're doing your thinking. And then we have the Smart Notes introduction before we get deeply into each of the four processes for each of the four sessions. So let's get started. Let's talk about setting up for success. Filing systems like Evernote and other note-taking systems of the past are dumb. And I mean that in the literal, not the insulting sense. You are the one who has to decide where every item lives. You are the one who is forced to remember how to retrieve that item when you need it. You are the one who has to organize your note-taking system constantly. And if you don't go and actively retrieve information that you put into that system, you will never see that information again. So Evernote and their yoke are basically just graveyards for ideas. You put it in, you never see it again, nothing comes out. And as you know, in the Rome for Results courses, we're all about adding process to your input so that you can get magical output. So we're going to talk about that today. Rome, on the other hand, is smart. Any user with a liberal use of backlinking and a strong understanding of the power of block referencing and indentation will empower Rome to retrieve for you, to make associations for you, to act like your own personal conversation partner. So the person with whom you share and discuss your thinking through writing. The hardest part for most new users of Rome, especially organizational and obsessive folks like academics, please raise your hand, will really have trouble letting go of this old paradigm. The hardest part of Rome is shifting your thinking from filing to freedom. Let go of your need to put everything in its place. I know the power of Rome. And yet, even saying that sentence, it gives me a bit of a surge of anxiety because these are deeply trenched mental patterns that are really tough to break. The question that you always ask yourself in other filing systems is, where does this belong? However, the question you ask in Rome, and this is really important, is, when do I want to see this again? Later on in the course, I will show you how to translate the answer to that question into action. But that question is a really important one to start practicing right now. So that's the shift in your thinking. Now let's talk about process before system. One of the main benefits of Rome is the lack of the dictated structure and the magical serendipity and intelligence that Rome can demonstrate and enable because of the lack of that structure. But this is also one of the major downfalls in Rome for new users. Many Romans will give you the advice to just dive in there, dump all your information in, and just stop backlinking. And I've worked in process engineering for long enough to know that for most people, that just won't work. It will work for people who intuitively and perhaps unconsciously implement process, which, to be fair, are probably programmers and coders and techies who are all the early adopters of Rome anyway. But it won't work for the rest of us, especially those of us who are aiming for a very specific result. In our case, it's a dissertation, a thesis, or an academic paper. You must have a process before you have a system. We discussed the basics of our process in last week's session. But in order to make that process work as intended, there is some work that we need to do within Rome. As I said in his book, Taking Smart Notes, which we will discuss in detail, Sonka Aron states that all thinking relies on that strong external scaffolding, and Rome research will be our scaffolding, and this week we will be setting up for success. Let me give you a touch point, something that you can wander into Rome with in your hands that is just a very, very high level overview of how organization happens in a completely different way. It happens horizontally rather than vertically and in folders. And this graphic is might or may not help you, but if it doesn't, put it away. If it does, if you find it useful, then you can use it. So this is going to be helpful to you when we get into the Smart Notes process as well. We are going to have within this Rome database that you're going to set up what I call collections. And collections are really just a single page that gathers together a bunch of different pages under a specific tag for the purpose of resurfacing. So this may be that you have a tag called, let's say, in my case, collaborative authorship. And there's no content on this page. It's just collecting together multiple pages that are also tagged with that tag. That's one way of resurfacing information. On the pages, the individual pages, we will be having our sources, our Z notes and our Q notes, which we're going to discuss, topics, and our outlines. And any other page with content in the main body may also have these related links. And what you have at the bottom are the block level notes. So these are F notes, L notes, and R notes. And again, we're going to go into this. So wander in with this in your hand and it will help. Anything that's a task or an update log. So in my system, every single block has a type so that I know what to do with those blocks. I know what kinds of pages I should collect them on. And then I also know what kind of pages belong in specific collections. And we'll get further into it, but keep it in your hand. It kind of helps to view it that way, to kind of get an understanding between a page and a block and when you might want to use them differently. When you backlink something, you are creating a full page. So I know that a lot of people liberally use pages, but I think it might be possible that they're liberally using pages because they haven't yet discovered the real power that exists in block referencing. And that's what we're going to try and uncover together through this course. So keep this page in hand. It might be helpful for you as we get ready to set up Rome. So let's talk about your Rome setup. I'm just going to close these so they don't distract you. Before we start, I'm going to state again that for the purposes of this class, I'm going to assume that you have a working knowledge of the Rome basics. We will be discussing a lot of individual setup during each one of these sections, but these are the things that you might want to set up immediately. So let's have a look at the overall course process. I've given this to you already, and let's have a look at where we are now. So this is the top level process. You can see here where we are going to discuss in each lesson every aspect of the process that we have built. Each of these sections also aligns directly to our Smart Notes process, which is the other piece of our external academic scaffolding. So actually this is lesson 3 that we're doing now, which is the Rome setup. And then in lesson 4, we're going to talk about Smart Notes. So today we're going to be focusing on this piece right here. I'm going to show you a model that you can use to set up your Rome graph for academic success. Now, remember, one of the best parts about Rome is that you can make it anything that you want. Eventually, you may develop a process that is specific to you, but what I'm presenting here is a good base from which to start to help you get going. And also to give you the external scaffolding, you'll need to run the processes for each one of the 4 sessions we're going to go through individually.
Hello, everyone. Okay, so at this point in the course, Lisa Marie is just about to walk through the Scaffolding Tools Hub to show you around and how that page is organized, and specifically to explain how to install these tools, the smart blocks, etc. But since the original recording, the process for this has changed. And also, the Scaffolding Tools Hub has been reorganized. So I wanted to talk about all of that right now. Let's start with the Scaffolding Tools Hub. I've tried to consolidate as much information onto this page as possible. That includes the tools that Lisa Marie uses in the course. So this includes the smart blocks, the Zotero Rome, and the Query Builder, as well as the reference management tool, which is Zotero, and a link to that. Also, Lisa Marie recommends a few things in the course, including a bunch of tools that she personally likes to use for different work sessions and for different purposes. She'll talk about these a little later in the course, but the items and the links are all here. There's this focus tool that's used. All of this information is here on the Scaffolding Tools Hub page. There are also all of the templates that are used in the course, including all of the smart blocks that are used are all in one place here. I'll talk about these more in a moment. I also have created a mirror of these smart blocks as templates that can be used with Rome's native templating feature. If you would like those, you can grab them here and copy paste them directly into your graph. More on this in a moment. The CSS that's used can be found here. We'll come back to this in a second too. Several books and articles have been recommended. Those are all listed. And all of the graphics that are used throughout the course are also here. You can just right-click and save image as if you want to copy for yourself. I believe they're all here, but after recording this, I will go through and make sure that I've found all of them and tag them correctly so they show up here with my query. Okay, so for now, that's what is here in the Scaffolding Tools Hub. So let's talk about the plugins. To install these tools, Smart Blocks, Zotero Rome, and Query Builder, you simply go to the Rome Depot. The Rome Depot is Rome's own app store, where the code for these has been reviewed by the Rome team, so you can be confident that there are no security vulnerabilities. To install something, let's say you want to add the Query Builder, you just find it in the list, click on it, and just hit the install button. That's all you have to do. It will be ready to go. I've already installed Smart Blocks because I'm going to do a little demo on those in just a moment. You can search here. The Zotero, you just installed this. you definitely will want to take a look at the developer's documentation, and that can also be found here. So let's talk about the templates. Okay, so what's the difference between a smart block and a native template? So a smart block allows you to trigger dynamic workflows that a native Rome template cannot do. So you can embed inside of a template a workflow that triggers kind of behind the scenes commands that you couldn't accomplish with a native template. But I want to say at the outset that if you are not comfortable using smart blocks, or if you would like an alternative path, something a little simpler, you can accomplish 98% of what Lisa Marie intended with the smart blocks with the native templates. You do not need to add the smart blocks in order to do everything that she's going to teach. If you go with the native templates, you will need to do a little bit of extra manual work in order to accomplish all of the additional workflows that the smart blocks automate. But I've been through all of them, and there's not a lot of extra work that's required. So what I'm saying here is you can definitely get by with the native templates. Okay. So now I'm going to do some demonstrations on using the smart blocks, and I'll also quickly show how it is that you can replicate a smart block using the native template by doing just a little bit of extra work. All right, so I can open this up over here. Let's do all right. So one of the templates that Lisa Marie is going to demonstrate in the course will be the day open template. That's basically a predefined template or structure for how to set up your daily notes page each day. The way to activate the smart block once you install, I just hit JJ. Maybe I would want to do a little search so I can narrow this down, and I want to say day open. Why don't I label this? So this is smart block version. Okay, so let's take a look what this is doing here. Okay, so this is the day open smart block that we just triggered with the JJ command. And it dropped this here for us. Just saves us some time, basically. What you'll notice here are a few things. First of all, in the template, this little time command here is basically a command that says enter the current time. What that essentially is doing is performing a command for you. So the way you do this manually is /. There's a command in the command palette here for current time, and it enters the current time. What the smart block does is it automates that. It's a very simple example as to what the smart block is doing. But let's do the same thing. So now on this one, I want to do 2 semicolons to open up the native template and choose day open. Okay, so now we're using this template, the native template for day open here. You can see it's just a copy paste of exactly what's here. But it's missing a few things. Namely, the dynamic commands or the workflows are not able to be replicated. But that's not so terrible. What I've done is to put in bold here what the smart block would have done for you automatically so that you can just replicate it manually. Okay, so when I open up the day, I can just put the current time there. For this part, it's saying the smart block is going to go through your graph and automatically populate any to-do items, a to-do item, that has been dated with today's date. And it'll put a copy of them here for you automatically. That's what this to do with today's date. Okay. So with the native template, you just have the instructions. Okay. I can simply do this by looking manually. So I would go to my to-do page. I would review the tasks and look for something that would have a date that is today. Maybe in the past. Maybe I want to add stuff to maybe I want to put this over here. So I've got this available to me. I just want to copy that and I'm going to put that there. Oops, this is the wrong one. Sorry, I want to go to the native template. There we go. So I've accomplished in a manual way the same thing that the smart block is doing for you in an automated way. So I want to add something here, which is I actually prefer the more manual workflow. Oftentimes I do. And the reason for that is because when you automate too many things, you start to kind of lose track of what's happening in your graph. It's actually a good practice to very frequently check and update your to-do page. This will very quickly grow to a point where it gets a little overwhelming. So by frequently visiting this, not only are you keeping it fresh, but also you're likely able to catch things that you missed. Maybe I forgot to add a date here, and I want to put this here like that, right? And so now I've dated that task, and now I'm going to copy it. And now I've got this one here. And I found that only because I'm looking on this page to go through and see what's going on. Okay. So this is a good example of how it is that you can replicate the smart block using native template. You can accomplish all of the same things just simply by leaving yourself a little note here as to what the smart block was going to do for you, and then do that manually. So, okay. And it doesn't take much time. And in some cases, it is even preferred. So if you want to go, you have a couple of options. So you can begin with the smart blocks, or you can go with the native templates. Either way, you just copy paste them here directly into your graph and they're ready to go. Or you can create your own. Okay, so that's the smart blocks. Let's talk about the CSS. Let's first talk about how to install the CSS, and then I'll talk quickly about why you may want to. Okay, so to install the CSS in your own graph, just create a page, Rome/CSS. Use the / command, and you're going to look for code block. Grab all of it with Command or Control A, and then Control C. Paste the whole thing into your code block here. Then change it to CSS. Once you've done that, click out of the block, and then your graph should update with the CSS installed. That's all you do. I have some instructions here for how to do this. Okay, so let's talk about why you may want to do this. This CSS mostly is just making this happen. So these are just links with a hashtag in front. Call that a tag. When you don't have the CSS running, all of your tags everywhere will look very much the same in terms of the styling. Now, these are are being used for in the course, and Lisa and we will be talking a lot about this. These tags are meant to denote a particular kind of note. Now, the challenge here is if you get a lot of these notes on the same page, then it becomes a little difficult to just sort of quickly identify what these notes mean. So it adds a little bit of extra cognitive work. If you have the CSS running, that becomes very easy. Right? These are very easily distinguishable. So if you have lots of notes on the same page, you can just very quickly visually identify where those notes are and what those notes mean. So in that sense, the CSS is actually really quite useful. You can adjust the parameters in here if you want to, if you are willing to try. So you can change the styling and the colors and all that. Okay, so that's the CSS. There's where you find it, how to install it, and why you may want to use it. All right, so that's the Scaffolding Tools Hub as it stands now. Just to quickly review, we went over the plugins, where to find them, and how to install them. The one that is most used are the smart blocks. To use these, you would just go to the Roam Depot, install the smart block plugin, copy the whole bunch of these, paste them into your graph in a place where you can find them again, and they're automatically ready to go. You would activate it just by hitting JJ and finding the block that you want. If the template is not listed here, you can just begin typing and find more. If you don't want to go with the smart blocks, you can go with the native templates, and they're all here. Okay, so that's the Scaffolding Tools Hub. That's how to get yourself set up. I hope that helps.
Okay, so as many of you know, as most of you I'm sure are aware, the Roam community has been struggling with referencing and output for quite some time. There's a lot of people working on it. And at one point, I got quite out of the loop. So the last 6 months, I was a little bit out of the loop because I was back to work on my PhD. But luckily, I have really good contacts. And Lucas from Cortex Futura and Site to Write was totally on the case. The methodology that we're going to use for both referencing and outputting our thesis creations, which we discuss at the end of the course, is pretty much identical to what Lucas teaches in his Site to Write course. And Lucas has kindly given me permission to share these features with you more or less unchanged. So, in order to be able to use Lucas's process, which works very well, you need to be using Zotero. Zotero is free. So if you are using another bibliographic tool, you won't have to pay for something new. It will require some hassle with transitioning an already full bibliography database, but there are plenty of videos and advice on how to get that done. However, in the collect lesson, we will do a deep dive on how Zotero fits in with all of these processes. But for right now, just work on getting Zotero installed, along with the couple of add-ons that we need, and preparing it for when we start to actually doing the create part. So there are 2 add-ons that you need for Zotero: Better BibTeX, which you can download here, and Zotfile, which you can download here. If any of you have any trouble with this specific installation, I think it's pretty basically simple, but sometimes people's at home computer setups can be different, or sometimes it just doesn't click. So if you have any trouble with that, please let me know and I will work on creating a bonus video specifically for Zotero setup. So, in summary, starting with using Roam Research requires a real shift in thinking. There is no filing per se. in Rome research. We will do some magical things to keep the notes time traveling, but there's no thinking of statically filing notes. And you need to take that habit sort of out of your brain, which is very difficult. Rome Research is a flexible system that can be set up any way you need to serve your purpose, but it is essential you know what you want to get out of it before you go into it. And luckily, we already know that. There are some basic plugins and tools you'll need to get started on this course, and there are others that we will install as we go. I promise all of them will be as easy as downloading these JSONs and these CSS files. And if they are more difficult, like Zotero, I can always create a bonus video for those who feel they need it. So, the course in action. What I need you to do this week is to go ahead and install all your tools and the other scaffolding from this lesson and get yourself set up and ready to go. So, what's next? What's next is the management processes. They're very exciting. I'll see you there where we talk about the daily and weekly processes and get stuck into how you can organize yourself for working in Rome. Onwards and upwards. See you next time.